Welcome back to Borrowed Wisdom Stories. Tonight's story comes from a woman named Claire, a retired nurse, wife, and mother of 2 adult children. She spent a lifetime keeping the peace, swallowing her pain, and protecting people who did not protect her. In her 70s, she decided to write one final letter, to be opened only after her death, revealing every secret she'd buried for decades, about her husband, her sister, her children, and the house they all believed they deserved. What you're about to hear is what was in that letter, and what happened to her family when it was finally opened. Now, here is Claire's story, in her own words.
My name is Claire, and by the time you hear this, I'll be gone. I'm not saying that to be dramatic. I'm just stating a fact. I'm 73 years old, and my hands shake a little when I write. But my memory is crystal clear. Sometimes, I wish it wasn't. I started this letter on a Tuesday morning at 6:42 a.m. at my kitchen table, with a cup of weak coffee and a blue pen that kept skipping. I remember the time because the clock over the stove was ticking so loudly, it felt like it was mocking me. Now or never, Claire, it seemed to say. That morning, I'd just hung up with my son, Ethan. He'd called to check in, which mostly meant reminding me of the retirement home brochure he's left on my counter the week before. "Mom, you really shouldn't be alone in that big house," he said. "Once we move you into assisted living, we can finally fix up the place and get some equity out of it." Get some equity out of it. Like my entire life was just a flip project on HGTV. My daughter Lily was more subtle. She lived 20 minutes away but was always too busy to come by unless she needed something. Whenever she did show up, she'd scan the living room and say things like, "When you're ready, Mom, we could knock this wall down and make it open concept." Buyers love that. Buyers, not we, not you. My husband, Mark, passed away 6 months earlier. Everyone said he was a good man, a family man. At his funeral, people stood up and called him generous, devoted, a rock. I watched our children nod along and thought, "You have no idea." That's when I realized I wasn't crazy. You see, this house wasn't just a house. It was my prison and my shield. And the way everyone looked at it, as something they were owed, made something in me finally snap. So I decided to write this letter. A letter that would finally tell the truth about everything. The affairs, the lies, the money, the baby. And I decided on one condition. It would only be opened once I was gone, when nobody could interrupt me, talk over me, or tell me to calm down. This is that letter. I grew up in Ohio, in a small town where everybody knew everybody and nobody knew anything real. I had one sibling, my younger sister, Emily. She was 3 years younger, prettier, louder, and our mother's favorite. That last part was never said out loud, of course. It was in the extra scoop of mashed potatoes, the new dress bought just because, the way Mom always took her side. I was the responsible one, the one who did dishes without being asked, who kept my grades up, who didn't get in trouble. It sounds like praise, but it was a curse. Responsible children become invisible adults. People assume you'll carry it, whatever it is. I met Mark at 23 during a night shift at the hospital. He was a med student then, charming and exhausted, with kind eyes and a crooked tie. He came in with another student to check on one of my patients, an older woman who'd fallen and broken her hip. He stayed after the other student left, helping me change the sheets because the woman had spilled her water. "Do you always do more than you're supposed to?" he asked, holding the plastic pitcher while I tucked the sheet. I shrugged. "Someone has to," he laughed. "Then I'm glad it's you." I almost blushed. Nobody said things like that to me. Men usually looked past me to my prettier friends. He asked me out a week later. We went to a cheap diner near the hospital, ordered fries and coffee we didn't need, and talked until 2 in the morning. He told me about his dreams of opening a small practice, of building a stable life. "I just want a simple, solid life," he said. "No drama." I thought, that's all I've ever wanted. We married 2 years later in a small church with fading blue carpet. I wore a dress my mother and I found on sale at Macy's. Emily was my maid of honor. She arrived late to the rehearsal dinner in a white, tight dress and stole every eye in the room. Mom cried when she walked in, not when I did. Emily made a toast that was mostly about her beautiful sister, but somehow ended with her own breakup story and the hope she'd find a love like mine someday. Everyone hugged her after. I stood there holding my own champagne flute, untouched. I told myself it didn't matter. I had Mark. That was enough. Or so I thought. The first crack in the perfect picture came 5 years into our marriage. By then, we had Ethan, a 2-year-old who loved trucks, and I was pregnant with Lily. Mark had finished his residency and joined a private practice. He worked long hours, but that's what doctors do, right? I told myself that every night when I reheated his dinner at 9:30 p.m., one Thursday night, he came home later than usual. It was almost 11. The TV was on low, Ethan asleep on my lap after refusing to go down in his crib. I was in an old t-shirt with spit-up stains, my hair in a messy bun before that was trendy. Mark walked in smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I noticed it immediately. It was floral and sharp, something expensive that made my Target body spray smell like a joke. I looked up. "You're late." He dropped his bag by the door, loosened his tie, and kissed the top of Ethan's head. "Emergency consult. Sorry, you should have gone to bed." I sniffed again, subtle. "Busy night, huh?" He didn't look at me. "Yeah, a lot of new patients." That's when it hit me. He was lying. I didn't know what about yet, but I heard it in the way his voice flattened, just slightly. I almost asked, "Who were you with?" But I swallowed the question and put our son in his crib. Responsible people don't accuse without proof. Responsible people give the benefit of the doubt. But that perfume, it stayed in my nose all night. The second crack in my perfect little world came on a Sunday. My sister, Emily, had moved to Chicago by then. She was working in marketing, posting glamorous pictures of bottomless brunches and rooftop parties. Every Thanksgiving, she'd come home with designer bags and stories about men with commitment issues. My mom would just sigh and say, "Emily just hasn't met the right man yet." Meanwhile, I'd be in the kitchen, basting the turkey, being the responsible one. That Sunday, Mark and I had invited my parents and Emily over for dinner in our new house. The house this whole story circles around. It was the first big house we'd ever owned. 4 bedrooms, a yard, a finished basement. We stretched ourselves thin to buy it, but Mark insisted, "It's an investment, Claire. It's for the kids. It'll be our legacy." During dinner, Emily sat across from Mark. They were laughing about some TV show I didn't watch, exchanging quick comments. At one point, she reached over and wiped something off his cheek with her thumb. "Sorry, you had sauce," she said, smiling. It was such a small thing. It shouldn't have meant anything. But his face, the way he froze for just a half a second and then forced a chuckle. The way she held his eye contact a beat too long. My stomach tightened. Later, I was washing dishes. The kids were playing on the living room floor. My parents were watching the news in the den. I was alone in the kitchen, and the clink of plates almost covered their voices. "Mark, you really did well for yourself," Emily said, her voice low, but not low enough. "Nice house, beautiful family." He laughed softly. "And you're surprised?" "No," she said. "I just remember college Mark. The guy who always said he'd never settle down." "People change," he replied. "I know," she said. "Some of us are still trying." There was a silence that made my heart pound. I turned off the water. The quiet was louder than the faucet had been. Then Emily's voice again, much lighter. "Relax, I'm just messing with you." I dried my hands and walked into the living room. They were sitting on opposite sides of the couch, not touching. Too far apart to be guilty, but way too close for my comfort. They both looked up at me like absolutely nothing had happened. That's when I realized I was starting to be edited out of my own life. Years went by. That's how betrayal works sometimes. It's not one big explosion, but 1,000 tiny cuts. Mark worked more. His dental practice expanded. He started going to conferences twice a year, always in nice places: Orlando, San Diego, Vegas. When the kids were little, I couldn't go. Traveling with toddlers is its own special kind of war. I told myself, when they're older, we'll go together. But by the time they were older, the kids didn't want to go, and Mark wasn't inviting me anymore. "These conferences are all meetings and dinners," he'd say. "You'd be bored." I believed him because I wanted to. Then there were the finances. Mark handled everything. "Don't worry about it, Claire," he'd say. "I've got it. You just focus on the house and the kids." He'd toss me a debit card for groceries and gas. I had my own small income from part-time nursing shifts, but it always felt like extra money, not our money. One afternoon, I was cleaning out a desk drawer in our home office. It was supposed to be a quick tidy. Instead, I found a bank statement addressed to Mark. It was for a savings account I didn't recognize, at a bank across town we never used. My first thought was practical. How long had he been saving? My second thought was much darker. Saving for what? That night, I waited until the kids were in bed and he was sitting in his recliner, half watching a game. I sat on the edge of the coffee table, the statement in my hand. "What's this, Mark?" He glanced down, his jaw clenched almost imperceptibly before he smiled. "Oh, that. It's just a side account, for taxes and stuff." "Taxes and stuff?" I repeated. "We have almost $200,000 in stuff?" He rolled his eyes. "Don't be dramatic, Claire. It's savings, for retirement, for emergencies. Isn't that what you always worry about?" "Then why didn't you tell me?" My voice sounded so small, even to my own ears. He sighed, turning down the TV. "Because every time we talk about money, you get anxious. I didn't want to stress you out. Look, I'm making sure we're okay. Isn't that what you want?" He flipped it, made it about my anxiety, made secrecy sound like protection. I just stared at him. "I'm your wife, Mark. I should know where our money is." "And you do now," he said, leaning forward and taking the statement from my hand. "I'll go over everything with you this weekend, okay?" We never did. I let it drop. I told myself I was lucky to have a husband who saved. That was the night I learned that financial betrayal doesn't always look like gambling or cheating. Sometimes it just looks like, "I've got it, don't worry." I have to fast forward now, because if I wrote every small betrayal, this letter would never end. Our children grew up. Ethan went to college, came home, and bounced from job to job. Lily became a teacher, then left to start an online business. She'd bring over throw blankets and candles, saying, "This would look great if you ever decide to stage the house, Mom." Our daughter Emily never married. She stayed in Chicago, a free spirit who entertained us all with stories of city life. Mark loved her stories. He laughed harder at her jokes than anyone else's. One Thanksgiving, I walked into the pantry and heard them talking. Emily's voice. "So, did you tell her?" Mark. "Tell who what?" "Claire," she said. "About the refinance. Does she still think the house is in both your names?" My heart just stopped. I froze behind the pantry door, a bag of sugar in my hand. Mark lowered his voice. "It's complicated. You know that." Emily scoffed. "Complicated is a convenient word, Mark." He sighed. "Look, the market was bad. My credit was better. The bank pushed for a single name. It doesn't mean anything." "Does she know?" Emily pressed. After a long silence, he said, "Not exactly." My knees went weak. I had to lean against the shelves. Emily laughed softly. "If she ever finds out you put the house just under you, she'll lose it." Mark's voice sharpened. "I didn't put it under me. It's safer this way. And she's my wife, Em. She's not going anywhere." Em. The nickname hit me like a slap. I'd never heard him call her that. I wanted to walk out and scream, "How dare you!" Instead, I stood there in the dark, the bag of sugar cutting into my palm, thinking, so the house isn't even mine. I didn't say anything that night. I smiled through dinner, refilled glasses, and passed the dishes. But something inside me shifted. I realized I'd built my life on someone else's paperwork. The truth about the house is the reason I'm writing this letter. Because after Mark died, the secrets didn't die with him. They grew legs and started walking around my living room. It started with the will. Years ago, we made one together. Everything was ours. We left the house to each other, then to the kids. We signed together. What I didn't know was that Mark had gone back. He'd seen a different lawyer. He'd written a different will. After the funeral, a man in a gray suit, Mr. Collins, the new lawyer, read through the documents. He explained that Mark had moved the house into a trust in his name, that I had lifetime use, but after my death, it would be divided between Ethan and Lily. That part didn't bother me. Of course I wanted the kids to have the house. What bothered me was the clause Ethan noticed. "Wait," he said, "what's this part about prior arrangements and settlement obligations?" Mr. Collins cleared his throat. "Just a standard note that certain financial obligations have already been satisfied through alternative arrangements. Nothing that affects your shares." He looked at me when he said it. Too long, too carefully. I felt sick, because I knew. Alternative arrangements. That was lawyer speak for the secret my husband had made me carry for 40 years. The secret of the baby. I was 29 when it happened. Mark's practice was just starting. Money was tight. I was working nights at the hospital to cover bills. We had Ethan, who was 3, and Lily, just 4 months old. We were exhausted, and then I got pregnant. I remember staring at that little plus sign in our tiny bathroom. The sound of the fan wasn't just noise, it felt like a storm inside my head. I sat down on the edge of the tub and just cried. But they weren't happy tears. They were pure panic. When I told Mark that night, a strange quiet fell over him. He didn't yell. He didn't hug me. He just stared at the wall. Finally, he said, "We can't afford another baby." I told him we'd figure it out. That was always my line. But he just shook his head. "No, Claire, not this time." The argument started. For days, we went in circles. He talked about the mortgage, the loans, our future. I talked about love, about faith, about making it work. We argued until we were both raw. And then he did something I never, ever expected. He called his sister, Emily. I came home from a long nursing shift one afternoon, and there she was, sitting at my kitchen table with him. The moment I walked in, they went silent. Their faces were tight, guilty. "What's going on?" I asked. Emily looked at me with this pitying look. "Mark told me, Claire, about the pregnancy, about the money." I felt so exposed, so angry. "How is that any of your business?" "Because I can help," she said. I asked her how. She glanced at Mark and he gave a slight nod. She took a deep breath. If you decide not to have this baby, I'll cover all the costs. I'll even help with the kids while you recover. You won't have to do this alone." I almost laughed out loud. The idea that this was help. "I don't want your money," I snapped. Mark just rubbed his forehead. "Claire, be reasonable. We're drowning. Em is just trying to make it easier." Em, that nickname again. It felt like the room was spinning. So they had already discussed it all, planned my body, my baby, my future, all without me. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about our empty bank account, the overdue bills, the holes in our kids' shoes. I thought about being home all day with 3 little ones, then working 12-hour shifts all night. And I hated myself for it, but a small, cold thought crept in. Maybe I can't do this. 2 weeks later, I made the appointment. I did it. I walked into that clinic with Emily by my side because Mark couldn't get away from work. She held my hand while they called my name. I don't remember the doctor's face. I only remember staring at the fluorescent lights on the ceiling, thinking, This is what breaking feels like. Afterward, Emily brought me home, tucked me into bed, and made me tea. Mark came home later, kissed my forehead, and said, "You did the right thing for the family." He never mentioned it again. Not once. It was like it never happened, except it did. It happened in my body, in my dreams, in every quiet moment. The only trace of it I ever found was a single line in his private will, decades later, referring to alternative arrangements. That's what my baby became. An alternative arrangement. So, why am I telling you all this now? Because my children grew up with a father they thought was flawless. They grew up believing this house, everything we had, was earned by his hard work and sacrifice, and they owed him for it. They grew up seeing me as extra, just a supporting character in their father's story. And after he died, they started circling, thinking it was their turn at the prize. Just a month after the funeral, my son Ethan sat at this very kitchen table, Zillow open on his phone. "Mom," he said, "houses in this neighborhood are going for crazy amounts. If we sell now, we could pay off my student loans and Lily's business debt. You'd have money left over for a really nice condo." We, not you, we. I told him quietly, "Ethan, I'm not ready to sell the house." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Mom, I get that you're emotional, but you have to be practical. This place is too big for you. You have like 3 rooms you don't even use." Then Lily chimed in, scrolling through Pinterest without even looking up. "She'd be so much safer in a senior community. Plus, they have activities. Right, Mom? Wouldn't you like that?" Activities, like I'm a bored toddler. I looked at their faces, my children, my babies, talking about my home like it was just a stock portfolio. "Your father promised me I could live here until I die," I told them. "And you can," Ethan said quickly. "We're just trying to plan ahead. Ahead. To the part where I'm gone, where this house becomes theirs." And that's when I decided they would not get to inherit a lie. As I sit here now, the house is quiet. No kids running down the hall. No Mark yelling at the TV. Just the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock. I've pulled out every folder from the safe. The original will, the amended will, the truth. This isn't just about a house anymore. It's about my story. And it's time they finally heard it. Thank you for listening. The refinance documents with only Mark's name, the statement from that secret savings account, and, tucked in the back, an old worn envelope with a clinic's name on it. I kept it. I don't know why. Maybe I knew one day I'd need proof that my pain was real. I spread everything on the table like a crime board, because that's what this feels like. A lifetime of small legal crimes against my trust. Here is what I want you, my children, to know. Your father loved you. That part is true. He showed up to your games, your recitals, your graduations. He stayed up with you when you were sick. He taught you to drive in that empty Target parking lot on Sunday mornings. But he was also selfish. He was controlling with money. He made decisions about our lives without me. He kept accounts in his name only. He put this house under his sole ownership and never fixed it, even when he could. He let my sister pay for my abortion when he should have been there himself. He let her step into spaces that belonged to me. He confided in her about our money, our house, our fears. And Emily, my sister, the one I spent my childhood protecting from bullies and heartbreak. She became my husband's emotional safe place. She was the one he called when things got hard. She was the one he trusted with secrets he never trusted me with. Did they sleep together? You might be wondering that. For years I did too. I never caught them. No hotel receipts, no explicit texts, nothing physical I could point to. But emotional betrayal leaves a different kind of trail. The long phone calls at night, the inside jokes at family dinners, the way she knew about the refinance when I didn't. One night, 3 years before Mark died, I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to go to the bathroom. As I passed the home office, I heard his voice. He was on the phone. The door was cracked open. "I can't talk long," he whispered. "She's sleeping." I froze. A pause. Then he chuckled softly. "Don't say that. You know I'd pick you in a crisis. You're the only one who actually gets me." The only one. My heart dropped. I knew that laugh, his Emily laugh. I stood there barefoot on the hallway carpet, listening to my husband tell my sister she was the only one who really understood him. I didn't push the door open. I didn't confront him. I went back to bed, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until morning. From that night on, I stopped asking myself, are they having an affair? I knew the truth. They were already having one. It just didn't involve a bed. Sometimes emotional affairs cut deeper because the body can be clumsy, but words are chosen. So why didn't I leave? You're probably angry with me already, thinking, "Mom, why didn't you take us and walk away?" The answer is simple and ugly. I was scared. Scared of money, scared of shame, scared nobody would believe me over the charming doctor and the fun aunt. I also thought staying was protecting you. I believed that a home with two parents, even flawed ones, was better than splitting your lives in half. I chose stability over self-respect. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for understanding. But staying doesn't mean I was powerless. As the years went on, I made quiet moves. I took a job at a different clinic with better pay. I opened my own small savings account in my name. Nothing huge, but enough. Enough that when Mark died, I could hire my own lawyer, not his, mine. Mr. Patel, a calm man with kind eyes, sat with me in his office and went through every document. He explained the trust, the will, the refinance. When I told him about Emily knowing before me, he shook his head. "You have more rights than you think, Mrs. Harris," he said. "This house may be in his name on paper, but you contributed to it in every way. Don't let anyone rush you into anything." So I didn't. I paid off small debts. I made modest repairs. I learned how to pay property taxes online. I prepared, and I wrote this letter. If you're reading this now, it means I'm gone. It also means Mr. Patel has done what I asked him to do, to bring you all here, to this dining room, and to hand you this letter. I can picture it. Ethan tapping his foot, Lily crossing her arms, Emily looking anywhere but at the paper. I can also picture the moment you hit this next part, because here is where everything changes. The house you think is yours, the one you've already mentally spent, it isn't going to you the way you expect. After Mark died, I updated my own documents. Yes, the trust he set up exists. Yes, the will says the house goes to you two equally after I pass. But there's a new condition, one I added myself. Before any inheritance can be distributed, I've requested a full, independent audit of the last 20 years of our family finances. I've also left specific instructions for Mr. Patel to legally reclaim my share of assets that were improperly managed or hidden from me. This includes this house. It will be sold, and my legally recognized half will be donated to a charity that supports women escaping financially controlling relationships. The other half is yours, but not before you understand the price that was paid for it. But I added an amendment. Because of the secret accounts he kept from me, because of the abortion he didn't support me through, because of the refinance he did behind my back, because of the emotional affair with your aunt, because of all of that, I decided something. Nobody gets this house for free, so this is what will happen. Ethan and Lily, you will still inherit the house. Equally. But there are conditions. First, you will each pay back to my estate the amount Mark kept in that secret savings account, adjusted for inflation and investment growth. That amount will be split 3 ways. 1 share to a local women's shelter. 1 share to a scholarship fund for single mothers going back to school. And 1 share to be divided between you. Second, before any sale proceeds or transfers, you will reimburse Emily for every documented dollar she ever paid on our behalf. The abortion, the early years loans. But this payment will be made from Mark's portion, his trust, not from mine. Mr. Patel has already earmarked those funds. And third, there will be a plaque. It sounds small, but it matters to me. If you keep the house, it will go by the front door. If you sell the house, the plaque will be installed at the Women AS shelter funded by the money from the secret account. It will read, "In memory of the women who stayed quiet so others could feel comfortable. May the next generation choose differently." You may be angry right now. You may feel like I'm punishing you for your father's sins. You may feel like I've betrayed you. But I need you to understand. The person I betrayed first was myself. I stayed in a marriage where I was never the safest place. I kept a sister who didn't protect me. I raised children who learned to value property over people. I helped build a foundation that taught you entitlement instead of gratitude. This letter is not only about punishment, it's about a course correction. There are a few more secrets you should know before you decide what you think of me. The first is about your Aunt Emily. I know you love her. She's fun. She's been there for you. I'm not taking that away from you, but you should know that the day of Mark's funeral, she came to my room while I was changing. I was sitting at my vanity, taking off my earrings because my ears hurt. She closed the door behind her and said, "You okay?" "No," I replied, "but I'm alive." She smiled sadly. "That you are." Then she took a deep breath and said, "Claire, I want you to know something. Mark, he loved you. He really did." I stared at her in the mirror. He had a funny way of showing it. She looked at the carpet. "Sometimes people love with what they have, not what you need." "That sounds like something he would have said," I replied. She didn't deny it. Instead, she walked over, put her hand on my shoulder, and squeezed. "I'm here for you, whatever you need." It should have comforted me. Instead, all I could think was, where were you when I needed you most? So I asked, "Were you in love with him?" She froze. Her fingers tightened. Then she let go. "It doesn't matter now," she said. But it did. It mattered to me. I turned, looked at her directly. "Were you?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Maybe, once, a long time ago. But I never slept with him, Claire. I swear to you, I crossed lines, but not that one." I believed her. Not because I trusted her, but because if she'd slept with him, she would have justified it to herself as fate. She wasn't crying because she was guilty. She was crying because she'd spent decades being the backup plan. You think I was the only one who lost something here? She lost a version of herself, too. I'm not telling you this so you'll hate her. I am telling you so you all see all of us clearly. 3 adults who never learned how to say what we needed without hurting someone else. The second secret is smaller, but I think it will mean something to you. Remember those nights when you, Ethan, would come home late from high school parties and find me at the kitchen table, pretending to be reading? I wasn't just checking on you, I was avoiding my bedroom. By then, your father and I hardly spoke. We coexisted. We split chores. We discussed practicalities. We didn't touch. I used to sit at this very table and imagine a different life. Not a grand, sweeping romance, just a quiet apartment with plants and a little balcony. A life where nobody expected me to host Thanksgiving or smooth over tension. I never did it. I stayed. But in that imaginary apartment, there was always a woman sitting at a small table with a cup of tea and a notebook. She was writing. I never saw what. Now I know she was writing this letter. If you've made it this far, you probably feel like your entire childhood just tilted on its axis. You might want to burn this letter. Pretend you never read it. Blame me for ruining the image you had of your father, your aunt, your family. You can do that. But before you decide, I'm asking you for one thing. Do not become your father. Do not make big decisions about other people's lives behind their backs and call it protection. Do not keep money secrets from your partners. Do not let someone outside your relationship become your emotional safe place while your partner sleeps down the hall. If you are unhappy, say it. If you are tempted, admit it. If you are scared, ask for help. Don't do what we did. Wait until someone's death to tell the truth. And if one day you have children of your own who start circling your house like vultures, remember how this feels. Remember that a home is not a winning ticket. It is walls soaked in the choices you made. Treat it, and the person who kept it standing, with respect. There is one last thing I want you to know, something hopeful. In the last few years of my life, after your father died and the noise quieted, I started going to a support group at the community center. It was for older women dealing with grief, divorce, or family estrangement. We sat in a circle on uncomfortable chairs and drank bad coffee from a metal urn. There, I learned a word I wished I'd had earlier: boundaries. I started small. I told you no when you wanted to store your unused furniture in my garage, just for a while. I told Emily she couldn't just show up and stay for a week without asking. I told the lawyer I wanted my own copy of every document. The first time I said no to you, Ethan, your face went blank. You were asking to use the house as collateral for a business loan. Mom, it's not a big deal, you said. We'd pay it back. It's family. I took a breath and replied, I love you, but I'm not risking my home for your loan. You stared at me. Dad would have. Your dad made a lot of decisions without thinking about the consequences, I said. I'm choosing differently. You left angry, didn't call for a week. I cried that night, but I didn't call you. That was my first real boundary. And you know what? I didn't die from it. I kept waking up, kept making my coffee, kept sitting at this table. The more I practiced boundaries, the lighter I felt. Not young, not new, but honest. That is the feeling I want you to chase. Not money, not houses, not approval, honesty. With yourself, with each other, with whoever you choose to love. This letter is my last act of honesty. You can do with it what you will. Sell the house, keep it, fight over it, walk away from it. But every time you look at these walls, or the plaque at the shelter, or the paperwork at the bank, I hope you remember this. Your mother was not just the woman who made dinners and sat in the stands. She was the woman who finally put her story on paper, even if it took her a lifetime. And what you do with that story next will say more about you than it ever did about me. Love, Mom. Claire.
Tonight, you heard about a woman who spent decades in the same house, believing that keeping quiet was the same as keeping her family safe, until she wrote a letter that shook every person who read it. Her husband's emotional affair with her own sister, his secret accounts, and the hidden costs of his choices all came to light after her death, along with her own confession of the ways she betrayed herself to keep the peace. This story shows how emotional affairs and financial secrets can be just as devastating as anything physical, and how silence can become its own kind of betrayal. It also shows that boundaries and honesty, even late in life, can change the way a story ends. So now it turns back to you. Who knows your partner's fears and frustrations better right now? You or someone outside your home? Is there a bank account, a decision, or a hidden resentment you've been keeping to protect someone, when really it's to avoid a hard conversation? If your story were written in a letter to be opened after you're gone, would you be proud of what it revealed, or terrified? Without sharing names or identifying details, share in the comments if there's a conversation you've been avoiding, or a boundary you know you need to set but keep pushing off. Sometimes putting it into words is the first act of courage. If stories like this speak to you, subscribe to Borrowed Wisdom Stories for more real stories about betrayal, second chances, and the quiet choices that make or break relationships. New stories are here to keep you company while you cook, drive, or try to fall asleep with a full mind and a heavy heart. And tonight, before you scroll to the next video, look at the person you love and say, "Tell me what you're thinking. I'm listening."